If you're taking a class with me, chances are you're going to be asked to write a tutorial essay or two and participate in an Oxford-style group tutorial. In this short video, I'll introduce the Oxford-style tutorial essay, and I'll create a separate video with instructions of how to prepare for and what to do during the tutorial itself. Now, it's called an Oxford-style tutorial and an Oxford-style tutorial essay because the model comes from the Oxford style of learning. There are 3 terms in an Oxford academic year, 8 weeks per term. The bulk of undergraduate studying or undergraduate education is tutorials, one-on-ones with your professor. Now, that's a privilege that in many places is almost impossible. One-on-one FaceTime is a rare treat indeed. The second best thing is group tutorials, where your professor meets with a group of students and together you read out and discuss each other's essays. Generally at Oxford, you'd write essays every week, 2,500 words or so 8 essays per term. Which is a lot of work, and you probably can't take more than 2, max 3 courses in a term because of it. In my courses, you don't write 2,500 word essays at the undergraduate level. They're much shorter, and there are only about 3, sometimes 2 per term. So here are a couple of essay writing instructions and tips, starting off with just basic information about submitting your essay and word count. So depending on the level of course, the essay length varies. This example is from a 1,000 level course, and the essay length is between 1,000 and 1,100 words. Don't exceed it. You need to learn how to compress, write succinctly, keep it under 1,100 words, excluding footnotes and bibliography. Please state the final word count somewhere at the beginning or at the end. During normal times when we're able to meet in person in classrooms, I'd ask you to print copies of your essays and staple them together, one for each of your group members, groups being anywhere between 3, 4, 5, 6 students. For remote online learning, tutorials online using Zoom or other software, just have your PDF ready so you can easily share it with your group. I usually ask you to submit your first version the day before your tutorial as a PDF. Now, the reason I have a deadline is that I discourage all-nighters. And so you don't have too much time. You can't stay up late and come to class late or tired. So submit the day before. Remember, this is your first version. There will be a second one. The second one will be the one that's evaluated. And after the tutorial, you'll have a couple of days to incorporate the feedback you get from your friends and your peers, and then work on your further developing your arguments in your essay, and then submit your final version for final evaluation. Directions for writing tutorial essays. Well, first of all, you don't have much time, and so you can't afford the vice of perfectionism and procrastination. Just kill your pride and perfectionism before they kill you, before they freeze your productivity and they sap the joy from the process and from your life in general. Do the best with the time you have, and then move on to other projects. 2, I often give options for essay prompts and titles. There might be a choice between 2 or 3 different titles and prompts. Now, choose the one that most interests you, not the one that you think is easiest, because if you're genuinely interested in the topic, it will be so much more pleasurable. 3, read and use all the primary and secondary sources listed in the essay prompt, including the pre-lecture readings and whatever lecture notes you have and other texts you find important. The distinction between primary and secondary sources does not mean important and less important sources. So for example, if the course is on J.R.R. Tolkien, primary sources will be, excuse me, primary sources will be works by Tolkien. Secondary sources will be works about Tolkien by others or works about the topic at hand, whatever it is, sex or creation or virtue or whatnot. 4, as you read your sources, summarize the claims the authors make. Write down what you think about the claims. This is a skill, the ability to focus on the essentials. The same goes for underlining works. You cannot underline excessively. You really need to choose. 5, brainstorm or mind map the various ideas and claims and counterclaims. Remember to reserve enough time for this stage, enough time for thinking, not just for reading and not just for writing. Obviously, thinking, reading, and writing are not mutually exclusive stages. They overlap quite a bit, but it's difficult. It's difficult because writing is thinking, and thinking is difficult. There's no way around it, but it does get easier. 6, decide what you want to argue in the essay and the route you will take. Which concepts, which claims and counterclaims will you include? You will have some issues. You may have to exclude a lot of issues. Your essay will require an argument, a thesis that you defend and provide evidence for. 7, write down a summary of the argument of your essay. Write your essay according to the route map you have planned. 8, revise your essay. Spelling, grammar, does it flow? Grammarly is a very good software that you might want to download. A very good tip is to print your essay if you're able to and practice reading it aloud, because you'll be amazed by how much you learn through this process. It highlights what you need to continue to improve. Practicing reading it aloud to your family or your friends also helps a lot, also in preparation of the tutorial where you're asked to deliver your essay. Ask your friends and your family to stop you and pause if what they find, what they hear is impenetrable or unclear. Remember to write for the ear, not for the eye. Write for the ear, not for the eye. You'll be reading your essays out loud anyway, and your peers will not be reading along with you. They will be looking at you, listening to you. Whatever copy of your essay they have, whether it's a physical printed stapled copy or whether it's the PDF, is just for note-taking, a kind of intellectual crutch of sorts. They won't be face down, nose deep in the actual work. They'll be listening and watching you. Retain the wording of the original prompt, title, word for word. Don't personalize the essay title. It's fun to personalize them, but for this exercise, just stick with the essay title It helps you to remain accountable and not go off in various rabbit holes. 10, font. Please use Times New Roman, size 12, double spaced. As for the format, the apparatus, use the Chicago style. There's a sample essay that I usually give. Basically, it means the footnote style. So use footnotes. It cleans up the bulk of your text from all these jerky parentheses and sources. It kind of all those references are cleaned to the bottom of the page. As this is a very short essay, here are some directions for this short essay style. Starting with, cut to the chase at the very beginning and start with this sentence. In this essay, I will argue that ... If you don't start with that sentence, at least end your first paragraph with that sentence. But it's better to begin with that sentence. In this essay, I will argue that ... And then give the outline of how that argument will be, you will arrive at that argument. What are the stages in this essay? Give the listeners, your audience, kind of a heads up of what to expect. Giving your thesis at the beginning of your essay like this, although it may sound boring, it's very valuable. It will hold yourself accountable. You will have to do what you say you will do. You'll have to deliver what you promise. Also, it gives a kind of a heads up to everyone. You already noticed that I used personal language. I argue. Don't shy away from using personal language. You were given bad advice in high school. I understand why some professors prefer and encourage you not to use I. In early stages of education, when you don't know the difference between an opinion and an argument, where the argument is an opinion that's actually backed by evidence and reasoning, it may be a good advice to not to use personal language. But I think it is a disservice because it leads to impersonal language, which makes it more difficult to distinguish between the voices, to distinguish between your argument, your source's arguments, and some third-party argument. When you say I, it's very clear where your contribution lies. The reader or the listener doesn't have to try and guess or excavate it. So 3, we mentioned the brief overview at the beginning of the essay. 4, a concluding paragraph that summarizes the arguments that have been made. 5, it's a short essay, but you will have to find ways to incorporate, to reference or quote, if you quote moderately, all of the assigned texts and lectures. Don't leave out anything. Drawing from non-assigned sources is fine as well, if they're appropriate and relevant and helpful. 6, provide a complete and polished bibliography at the end. You'll see the example given in the sample essay. So basically, book titles in italics, chapter titles, and articles in quotation marks, and so on. 7, hold your audience's hand. Remember, you're writing for the ear, not for the eye. So you're going to have to consider linking sentences. Think of the metaphor of actually holding the reader or holding the listener by their hand to help them orient through the essay. Think of your essay as a teaching tool, helping someone to understand the issue. 8, shorter sentences make for clearer writing. Economize. So if you can say it in 4 words, don't use 10. Not for this kind of exercise. This is a short paper, so everything non-essential must go. The fluff is non-essential, and it usurps space from your argument. Finally, write for your educated friends, not for any average person and not for a professor with a thesaurus-like brain. It's a balancing act. There's going to be another video, a separate video about how to prepare for the group tutorial setting and what to do during that tutorial. So watch this space.